What was your, it seemed like a good idea at the time story? In high school, my friend discovered that he was particularly agile at running toward a wall and kicking off of it into a backflip. He would do this all day, every day, before school, at lunch, etc. One day we were inside a classroom and the teacher had stepped out for a moment. Of course he took this opportunity to try his little trick. He didn't, however, take into account the fact that drywall might not support his weight as well as the brick and concrete walls he'd tried before. His leg ended up busting straight through the wall to the other side, into a classroom full of students taking an exam. So I wasn't actually in the class taking the exam, but to this day, I still imagine how strange and hilarious it would be to be sitting in that class then suddenly see a leg burst through the wall. Makes me smile just thinking about it. I ran across the street with my eyes closed when I was 14. I didn't get hit by a car. However, I ran into a tree head first and cut my face and knee open. For all of you asking what my thought process was, it is as follows. Who am I kidding? I have no idea what I was thinking. When I was a kid, I tried to ride my bike up the trunk of a tree so I could kick off and try to land it, and it'd be really cool. Turns out a tree trunk is rounded, and so you'll just slip off the trunk and hit your head on the tree. My brother still gives me about trying to ride my bike up a tree. Holding on to my friend's car mirror while skateboarding on a newly paved parking lot. Me and my friend used to play a game where we threw a Swiss Army knife up in the air at night time and then ran away from it with the knife part out. Playing sled dog with my newly rescued husky and a longboard on the hilly streets near my house in college. Snapped my right forearm in half and had to walk a mile back home to get a ride to the hospital. Hey, you know those degenerates who you stay out drinking with until sunrise every other day? Why don't you live with them for the last 2 years of law school? That won't cause any issues at all. Cue 2 years of abuse to my body and liver and more than a little strain between me and my friends at the time. Overall it was fun, but definitely not a good idea. So back in the day my brothers and I were shooting a bow and arrow behind our house. We had a proper backstop and a nice target on a bale of hay. After about an hour, we were getting bored and one of my brothers had a stroke of genius. Let light one on fire. So there we are wiring rags to arrows and soaking them in gas and shooting stuff. Didn't take long and half the yard was on fire. We'd shot pretty much every flammable thing we could burn in the yard. Since we were running short on stuff to shoot, my brother decided to launch one in a 45-degree architecture over the woods behind the house. We all watched, saw laughing and giggling. When it hit the apex was when it dawned on us that this was in fact a really stupid idea. All 6 of us sprinted off into the woods in the direction it had been shot. Wasn't hard to find it'd light an entire little meadow on fire. So we ran around stomping out fires for an hour. When we finally got the fire put out, we were sitting by the creek and my oldest brother looks at us all and says, "Dad never hears a word about this." When I was 15, my best friend and I just got new BB pistols. They were the Wilder CP99. Looked identical to the real Wilder CP9, with a removable magazine and no orange tip. We were playing with them in the backseat of his mom's car. They weren't loaded, we were just excited and wanted to take them out of the box. She knew we had them out and didn't think anything of it. This was the late 90s by the way. Before going back to his house, she went through the drive-thru at Burger King. You know where this is going. She's ordering food with 2 large 15-year-olds holding guns and pointing them at everything. Fast forward 30 minutes, we are pulling into their driveway and his dad comes running out of the house, yelling hysterically. One of his friends just called and said he heard on the police scanner that they were looking for his vehicle with 2 white males holding a female hostage at gunpoint. Few minutes later several police cars pull in the driveway, jump out with guns out, making everyone get on the ground. It took some explaining on his dad's part about us being a bunch of dumb 15-year-old me couldn't figure out what all the fuss was about, but 34-year-old me looks back and realizes that might be the dumbest thing I have ever done. Applying for a PhD position. Pay and no free time in sight for the next 3 years. Thanks to it, I despise working in science like never before. I'll let my 14-year-old cousin at the time try driving the family car. I was like 18 back then or 20, and I told him it's easy to drive an automatic car, basically like driving a go-kart. Told him gas was right and brakes were center. I forgot to mention that changing the gear to D will automatically have the car move. We both panicked and hit a tree in front of us at probably 1 miles per hour. Luckily we were in our neighborhood by a dead end. So I was in Uganda with my family and we see a large, about 5 foot tall, curled up leaf hanging about 8 feet off the ground. We are told that these leaves curl up and fall out the trees and they are pretty heavy, so it can be dangerous to have it fall on you. My dad and I think, won't it be helpful of us to get this thing down? So we are there whacking it with sticks, trying to get it down, to no avail, when my dad says, hey, climb up on that wall there, son, and jump, grab it and then pull it down. Well, that sounds like a swell idea, Dad. So I do just that. I don't manage to get it all the way down, but as soon as I hit the ground, I get this burning sensation in my elbow. Turns out there's a hive of Ugandan mud wasps living in this specific leaf, and they do not take kindly to young men trying to tug their home down. So I'm just sprinting back to the office, where the rest of my family is sheltered from the sun, and I practically have 2 elbows on one arm at this point while, as my dad described it later, an army of large, black blots give chase. I make it back inside, and my arm is numb, except for the searing pain in my elbow. Thankfully, there was no further reaction. The pain lasted only around 3 hours, and the swelling was down by the end of the day. That being said, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. Even worse than the time I broke my arm into 3 pieces while arm wrestling. Starting a career in television in the late 90s. I mean, the internet is cool and all, but it's still way too slow to ever compete with 200 TV channels, right? I went on a solo trip to Costa Rica when I was 26. I'm a fairly petite female. I speak no Spanish. The eco lodge I was staying at helped me arrange a guide for an all-day hike. We were flown by 4-seater plane into the jungle, a 26-hour walk to the nearest town. We landed, Jose and I hopped out, and the plane took off again, leaving me, Jose and his machete alone for the day. Thankfully it went okay, but as soon as that plane took off, I realized I had made a bad choice. Snow water skiing. Me driving the snowmobile across a snowy field, and my little brother skiing behind holding a tow rope. 2 broken legs. I was in the area, so I stopped at my now ex-girlfriend's house to ask her to go to breakfast with me. Pulled up to see her at the front door, and her neighbor walking out of her place while putting his shirt back on. She sees me, and I just shook my head, waved and then left. Never spoke to her again. When I was a teenager, my brother, cousin, and a couple of friends decided to try to steal a Coke vending machine by tipping it over into the back of a Ford Ranger, pick up and take off. We were like, we'll just put it in our garage and have plenty of soda and we'll refill it. We had one of those keys for them. It was 2 in the morning and we're all wasted. This was mid-90s mind you, and way out in the country. There was a little store with the machine. We backed up, and my brother and I got it rocking back and forth and finally blam into the back of the truck. It lifted the front end of the truck off the ground, and as soon as it landed in the bed, my buddy started hauling with me, trying to jump into the bed with the vending machine, and my brother hopped on the back of the vending machine, riding it like a majestic horse. But we forgot to unplug it, and for some reason it was just enough that it pulled the machine out the truck with my brother on it and crashed to the ground. We were young, dumb, and bored as hell, but it made perfect sense to me then. Going on a 4-day bender with no sleep, ended up getting the kicked out of me and required 7 stitches in the back of my head, spending 2 months wages, losing my brand new £1,000 phone and off numerous ex-girlfriends by declaring my love for them. Oh, and I was hungover for about a week. Haven't had a drink for 3 months now because of my stupidity. I had just finished this bike ride with my scout troop and we ended it at the side of a river. So waiting for our parents to pick us up, the boys all go to a rope, swing to around in the river. It was absurdly shallow. The furthest swing would still land you in 3-foot water. Average lazy swing was 2 feet deep or so. Mom comes. Some dad hollers at me that she's arrived. I run back until I can see her getting out of the car and yell, "One more swing mom, I'll be right back." She seems in a good mood, says okay, starts chatting with other adults there. So not 2 minutes later, I walk up to her with a broken arm. I had gone back for that one more swing, screwed up and planted my wrist into the shallow water, broke my arm, and got out of the water, saying bye without telling the kids what I'd done. Just sorta walked up to my mom. "Hey, I just broke my arm. Sorry." She was not pleased, like, "Seriously, flick my bick. You had to go for one more swing. Come on, let's go get a cast, you idiot."